Hello everyone, welcome back to Game Day. Prepare for a liftoff as we take the most powerful and expensive GPU on the market, the RTX 4090, a $1,700 cards or pounds depending on where you live. The 4090 is supposed to be the ultimate 4K card, but can it be maxed out by Star Citizen in 4K, or will it also be bottlenecked? In this video, we're going to make a full GPU utilization analysis across multiple scenes in Star Citizen and see how the 4090 performs both in 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. To tailor the analysis of the GPU, I will include more benchmarking scenes beyond the Lorville run and include Area 18, Orison, and I'll also be sharing the run path with you so you can test it yourself and compare. To ensure that we are leveling out any variances of benchmarking Star Citizen in the multiplayer environment, we are doing 3 runs and taking the average results. And we're running the settings at max to ensure we're pushing the GPU to the fullest. For this test setup, we're using a maxed out 3900KF with a fully optimized and tuned RAM. For the full system specs, please have a look in the description below where you can find all the parts that is used in this PC. We begin with the ever so popular Lorville run. At 1080p and 1440p, the FPS is virtually the same. It's only when we introduce 4K we start seeing that we are now dropping FPS into the 70s. Now this tells us that we are most likely GPU bound. Putting the 4090 to its knees, we're no longer fully limited by the CPU, rather it's the 4090 that is. If we dig a little bit deeper and take a look at the GPU utilization, we can see at 1080p, the 4090 is within the 50 to 60% range, peaking at 80% GPU utilization. Moving on to 1440p, we can just see that the 4090 is kissing the 90% range and it's being used on average 70%. This means there's additional 30 to 40% performance to be unlocked here. Note that this is at very high clouds being rendered as well in distance. Now moving to 4K, we can actually see that the 4090 is being completely maxed out, and the spikes you're seeing when the 4090 is dropping below 100% is the result of current Star Citizen's slow render thread, which will be resolved in 3.18 patch. But game day, now that the GPU is 100% utilized, does the RAM still matter, which you said in your previous video? And the answer is still yes. RAM does still matter at 4K. So I included the plug-and-play settings of 2666 MHz and 3600 MHz, all in XMP. As you can see, there is a 10 to 20% performance difference across the board by lowering the RAM, and in 4K every frame matters more because we are just below 60 FPS on average. So this is actually where you notice the biggest difference by not having fast RAM. It is the scenes in Star Citizen where you don't have volumetric clouds or any heavy rendering activity. These are scenes like out in space, in planets, moons without clouds. This is where the GPU won't be fully utilized in 4K, and this is where the tuned RAM plays its biggest role and have the most benefit even in 4K. Now, to give it another real-world example, we can actually show you benchmarks that is repeatable and we can test, and you can also test at home. We're taking a look at Area 18, where we have our next benchmark coming up. And for this, we are calling it the Area 18 run. Once again, we're starting from the exit place where you're leaving the elevator coming from the hubs, running all the way to the terminal where we are passing the different spaces and environment, going through Area 18 and then taking the shuttle all the way to the terminal. This run can be replicated by anyone, but taking a look at the results here, we can see that in Area 18, where there is no clouds or heavy GPU rendering activity, the 4090 is still not being pushed to its max, because at every resolution, the FPS is just the same. Taking a look at the GPU utilization in Area 18 in 4K, we can see that it's hovering around 70% in the beginning and just touching 100% utilization towards the end of the benchmark. Taking a look at 1440p, we can see that the GPU utilization drops even further down to the 50% range and in the high 60s as well. And of course, if we include 3600 MHz, what you can see is that it's also bottlenecking the 4090 even in 4K. So this is why it's important to really push your system by tuning your RAM even in 4K. However, this is not a RAM review. This is a GPU review, so we're not going to spend too much time on that topic. If you want to learn more how RAM scales with your system, then please check out my first video where we're full DDR4 RAM analysis across different frequencies. Next up, we want to test the most GPU intense place in Star Citizen currently, which is Orison. In this, we're doing a simple Orison run where we are taking the shuttle all the way from the beginning of the halves to the end of the station. It is shorter and is simpler, but it's also very easy to replicate. Orison is the first volumetric gas giant planet in any video game, and as such, it forces the 4090 to its knees by rendering dense volumetric clouds, which is very GPU intense. In Orison, we're getting on average 53 FPS, with the 1% lows being 28 FPS. This low FPS comes from certain scenes being in the mid-30s. So when we look at 1440p in Orison and in 1080p, we're now looking at being CPU and RAM bottlenecked again. And if we dig deep into the GPU utilization, we can see that in 1440p, the 4090 is literally just smoothing and touching 100% utilization in the beginning. This is why we see a little bit lower FPS range in 1440p. Meanwhile, in 1080p, we're still CPU bound. So there's a lot of performance still to be gained here, but from a 4K perspective, the 4090 is completely maxed out, and the only way we can extract more information is if we were to increase the power consumption above 450 watts, because we hit that target quite frequently throughout the run. I just want to say, if you enjoyed this video so far and my other videos, then please subscribe. This channel is fully funded by myself, and any support is given by subscribing, as it will go a long way to support future videos and future analysis. I want this channel to be fully backed by you, to make sure that I can hold a journalistic integrity and give you an unbiased review on hardware for games like Star Citizen, so you can make better decisions when you're building your PC, but also improve your overall experience of playing this game in its full glory. And yes, to make sure this video is not clickbaited, the 4090 just hit 200 FPS in 4K while quantum traveling. There are obviously certain scenes where the CPU will not bottleneck the 4090, and quantum traveling is one of those scenes. There's also a lot of scenes where the 4090 is in the hundreds of 60 FPS, usually in moons and in bunkers. That's where the CPU is not normally holding the 4090 back. It's mainly in dense areas where there's a lot of entities to draw from. This is where the CPU is holding back the 4090. Now, in summary, the 4090 is an absolute beast. However, there are some areas where the foundation of the system, the CPU and RAM, is still bottlenecking the GPU even in 4K. But it's very, very clear that the 4090 is the GPU that is meant to be played in 4K. If you're playing this game in 1440p or 1080p, there are other GPUs that are more price reasonable at those resolutions, because you will still more likely be bottlenecked by the CPU. And if you want to learn more about where that bottleneck might lie, then please check out my other videos on core scaling, frequency scaling, and RAM scaling, which you can view here.